Welcome back, Concordia University, Irvine students. 506 MHA 506 Healthcare Law. Wait a minute here. I think I have a typo. It says we're in week three. Is that right? Oh my goodness. Time sure flies when you are having fun researching such an interesting topic. For me, healthcare law. As a matter of fact, healthcare law is so important to me that I earned that degree right there, which is a law degree from Concord University with a concentration in healthcare law. This is where the future is. As a matter of fact, this is the now healthcare law. If you look at some of the major headlines in every major newspaper across this country, it involves this topic or an extension of this topic. It is so important for you to understand this as managers and as executives, as owners, as administrators, as entrepreneurs. We talked about in the last session about reducing risk reduction, this is it, knowledge, as they say, is key. Knowledge is power. And so your understanding of this topic, particularly week three, fraud, waste, and abuse, will be critical for your own personal effectiveness and the efficiency and functioning of your team, of your department, of your division, of your organization, of your health system, if you will. So, we're going to talk about fraud, waste, and abuse. And I know any one of you, if you've been in healthcare for longer than 6 weeks, you know all about fraud, waste, and abuse because it is almost impossible to onboard with any health care organization, whether you're on the hospital side, the ambulatory side, the IT side, without talking about fraud, waste, and abuse because it's mandatory and it's contractually obligated there between health systems. That's how pervasive the issue is with fraud, waste, and abuse here. So we'll talk about that in great detail. As a matter of fact, um, uh, let's say here, when we look at fraud, waste, and abuse, there is when someone intentionally lies or defrauds insurance companies, Medicare or Medicaid, in order to get money or some type of a benefit that they aren't entitled to. That's the fraud part. By the way, I'm quoting from multiple sources, but my go-to sources are always going to be Cornell Law School. Uh, and so now when we look at waste, that's when someone overuses the health services in a negligent way, if you will. So when you overuse the service in a careless way, then you are abusing, and abuse happens usually when medical practices aren't followed or when expenses or treatments aren't needed that are still being rendered, i.e., non medical necessity, if you will. And so then obviously all of those lead to abuses in the system. As a matter of fact, here, the Office of Inspector General of the United States of America, it describes that or it defines abuse as excessive or improper use of a thing or to use something in a manner contrary to the natural or legal rules for its use. And so abuse can occur both in financial terms or non financial terms. But when we put the three together, it is considered FWA or fraud, waste, and abuse. And usually you have to go through annual training, depending on who you're contracted with or depending on who your vendors are. You may even have to go through multiple fraud, waste, and abuse trainings because, again, it's part of the contractual agreement when health systems or healthcare organizations and vendors and everyone in that quote unquote value chain in order for them to do business with each other. They all have to agree to mitigate fraud, waste, and abuse. And one of the ways that they do that is by mandatory new hire training and mandatory ongoing annual training. So, again, according to the OIC, fraud is defined as the wrongful or criminal deception intended to result in the financial or personal gain of the person. It includes false representation of facts, making false statements, or concealment of information. Waste is defined as the thoughtless or careless expenditure, misarrangement, or abuse of resources to the detriment or potential detriment, in this case, of the United States government. Waste also includes incurring unnecessary costs resulting from ineffective or inefficient practices, systems, or control. And then finally, abuse is defined as an excessive or improper use of a thing or to use something in a manner contrary to the natural or legal rules of its use. And again, that can occur in both financial or non financial contexts. And that is according to the Office of the Inspector General of the United States of America. So that is an overview of what we're going to talk about here in chapter 3. Of course, you've got your Christian message here where you're going to write a brief reflection of scripture's account of setting contractual differences in the New Testament compared to the judicial process of today. Very thoughtful there. Your readings are chapter 6 and 7 of the textbook, Legal Aspects of Healthcare Administration. And then there are many, many handouts here. And that's a good point here because I'm noticing here that most of these handouts have to do with CMS. And I think that's appropriate there, especially when CMS probably spends or responsible for almost 70 cents of every dollar spent on healthcare. And so when you look at, let's say, fraud, waste, and abuse from Medicare's perspective, uh, it can be pretty extensive. As a matter of fact, there is a web based training there that I'm going to add to your resources for the course that I hope you find helpful there for your week 3 midweek resources. So look forward to reading that. It's a pretty thick document. You don't have to read it verbatim. I'm just kind of making that available for you, especially for those of you that are going to incorporate these types of topics into your final projects, for example. I will caution you, though, that most of the resources that you get on fraud, waste, and abuse probably need to come directly from .gov sources or other, case law, if you will, are probably good. But anyway, you can click on any one of those YouTube videos there, and maybe even all of them, and get more information on fraud, waste, and abuse. There is a self paced lesson in week 3 that will help you as well. And guess what? We've got a live session this week. So we finally here can get back together again in week three, and we can do some deeper dives on some of these topics here. The live session starts at 6 p.m. And you can pretty much expect us to go till right about 7:30. I can tell you we won't go over, we won't go past 7:30, but we'll probably bump right up against that 90-minute time frame. We've got a lot of topics to cover. And they are complex topics, especially when we talk about FWA and regulatory oversight of FWA, and then also whistleblower protections as well. So, kind of be ready for that full 90-minute session, just like I know you will be. The sessions are always recorded, of course. So if you can't make it in person, you do have the ability to listen to the recording afterwards. You've got your discussion form here, and we're really asking you from your opinion what services are most often contracted by hospitals, and should healthcare organizations do to create environments in which stakeholders feel safe about reporting fraud, waste, and abuse, and then, of course, provide evidence for your arguments. I'll just tell you a real quick story for me. And this is back when I was with an organization, Coast Healthcare Management, which ultimately got acquired by Tenet Health while I was there. But before the acquisition, we were just a little small MCO, managed services organization, and I was responsible for fraud, waste, and abuse training. To make a long story short, my bosses, and I do mean bosses at the highest level of the organization, they didn't want me to put the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline number in the training materials or make it available to anyone in the organization. And then when it came down to actually conducting the training, my goal was to make it fully online, automated training, and then have those what are they called, attestations, if you will. But there was no support for doing that either, because the bosses didn't want the paper trail to be connected, if you will. So, to make a long story short, I had to step aside from conducting that training because it wasn't ethical, if you will. And I guess I'm saying all of that to say that no one has the authority to tell you to do anything illegal or anything unethical, especially when we talk within the context of fraud, waste, and abuse. So be careful, because, I know many of you, just like myself, we always want to climb the organizational chart, or the so called corporate ladder, and we want to make our bosses happy, and we want to do the right thing, but at some point you have to draw the line, and that line is, for me, drawn when no one can tell me to do anything unethical, which is exactly what they were asking me to do. And of course, no one has the ability to tell you to do anything illegal as well. And so use those two parameters, and intertwine that with your Christian faith in order to establish your own personal, professional, so called line in the sand, if you will. And finally, here, as we conclude week three, there is a case briefing: the United States versus uh, Rafa. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. That was a Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals case back from 2004. Remember, um, when you're doing your case briefings, redundancy is the key. That I know you're not in law school, but that was one of this the toughest concepts. I mean, it seems simple now that I talk about it, and I'm giving you the advice: embrace redundancy. It's all about the redundancy. But really, that's what these case briefings are all about. Now, it isn't about verbatim copying and pasting, not that any one of you are doing that, but redundancy as far as the facts and as far as the fact patterns there. And in order to do good in any law class or in any law school, you've got to be able to embrace that redundancy. So embrace the redundancy as it relates to briefing those cases and building those fact patterns and uh, governing laws and analysis and conclusions as it relates to the case brief. And then finally, here, project milestone number one is due this week. You're going to submit a preliminary contract analysis. Think of the contract that you will explore, and hopefully you've done that here for the past 3 weeks. You're going to outline any potential fraud, waste, and abuse issues that you plan to address in your contract and context analysis. Okay, so that is it for week 3. I do so much look forward to connecting with you on Wednesday at 6 p.m. in our live session. Please reach out to me with any questions, comments, or concerns.